Hello, and welcome to another episode of Extreme Science Daily, the daily science podcast. I hope everyone is seated and well, and in the mood for some extreme science knowledge. I'm your host, ESD, spreading information to you live on the internet daily. This is episode number 4 of the Extreme Science Daily podcast. And today's topic is telephones. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard right. Today's topic is telephones. We are going to discuss everything there is to know about telephones. What is a telephone? What makes a telephone unique? What makes a telephone important? These questions and many others will be answered in this episode number 4 of the Extreme Science Daily podcast. I still vividly remember my first contact with the telephone at a very young age, 4, 5 years old, when my parents handed me a telephone. And on this rainy Thursday afternoon, my dad handed me the telephone. It was a dark grayish-red plastic casing. One of these older telephones. Back then, for all you older listeners, mobile phones they were in existence, yet they did not reach today's prevalence, of course, and they were both expensive, not very widely used, hence not immediately useful. The standard was having your telephone at home, and nobody expected availability by telephone from you in the frequency of today. Hence, mobile phones, for this anecdote, are sort of up the game. Anyway, I was handed this telephone and told to call my grandparents. We had just gotten this new phone, and my parents decided it was time to get used to using it for me, as they did not want to have me be left behind the technology in this regard. So I replied to my father, "Father, how do I call my grandparents with this?" As to which he replies, "You need to dial their number." The voice in my head rang, "Number? I'm immediately interested. I love numbers." But I still didn't know what sort of number he was referring to. So I asked for clarification, and just like you might ask for clarification if you do not know about telephones, what sort of number could be in play here. So each telephone has a number, and as telephones, with the primary use being a communications device over an arbitrary distance, you are able to pick up your telephone's earpiece and mouthpiece and reach somebody who also owns a telephone at any place in the world while connected through telephone lines. These telephone lines are able to transfer sound from you to your correspondent, your conversation partner on the other side, as well as sound from your conversation partner on the other side to you. This is the primary use of telephones. But you cannot simply pick up the telephone, and you never could, and start talking immediately, because your telephone is simultaneously connected to all other telephones in the telephone network. In order to tell the telephone, this is the person I want to call, this is the telephone I want to reach and attempt at making a conversation with, you need to help the telephone identify the aim, the destination for your call. And that's where the telephone number comes into play. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what telephone numbers have been used for centuries. Since the inception of the telephone in 1628 by an engineer man famous for inventing the telephone, numbers have been conceived since the beginning of the telephone time. Simple. As my knowledgeable father introduced me to this concept, I was immediately able to apply it. I recalled from my memory my parents' phone number that I had weeks previously seen in the phone book that we kept, with all the handwritten phone contacts that we had, handwritten the names and telephone numbers into it. As I have a extremely highly functional photographic memory, and began dialing it in. Seconds after I was finished dialing the number, a sound rang through the earpiece, which I had placed next to my ear and the mouthpiece next to my mouth. You can imagine that as a telephone shell, a telephone hand piece lifted from the main machine, raised into the air slightly up to the height of my head, then displaced until it reached the side of my head, being all the while being held in my hand, and pressed solidly but not so firmly that it hurts against my hand with the formerly lower or downwards facing part of the handpiece now orientated towards the inside of my head, such that the speaker, the now upper part, oriented upwards towards the sky, away from the floor, touches my ear so that the sound from the telephone network may directly be transferred from the speaker into my ear, and the now lower part oriented downwards, formerly oriented right on the main machine while still resting on it, oriented such that it was near my mouth. Reason being, it contains a microphone for the sound to be recorded into and transferred over the telephone lines. If you cannot quite imagine the sight from my explanations, the setup for beginning a telephone call with a classical telephone, feel free to rewind the podcast now back to the point where I started giving these instructions, and you can try to follow them with an imaginary telephone yourself, or a model of a telephone that you might have constructed from various materials. So, after dialing in the number on a pad of numbers ranging 0 to 9, dialing it in digit by digit from left to right, pressing each button for the corresponding digit once to dial it in, and holding the headpiece, the phone shell, the manus part in my hand to my head, I heard a sound that would become familiar in later years of frequent telephone use. I will try to demonstrate it, but mind that this is not a one-to-one original demonstration, but merely a mock usage of my mouth, my voice, to reenact the sound that a telephone makes as a connection is being established. And then a click, because my grandparent had answered the phone, themselves lifted up the hand part of the telephone and transferred it by lifting and horizontal displacement, as well as a rotation of the wrist towards their ear and mouth with the correct parts respectively. Those parts being the speaker and the microphone part of the hand part of the telephone, which is connected to the main piece, which in turn is connected to the telephone line by a twisted cable. It looks like a spring, sort of. Why these sounds that I demonstrated? These sounds, you may ask? And it's a very good question. Well, these sounds represent an alarm, a phone ring. It gives the opposing end, the destination of the call, a signal. When somebody else, who also owns and operates a telephone, dials your number, your telephone is going to notify you of this occurrence while the person is still trying it. By ringing, it receives information that a call to your destination is being made and starts ringing its bells or an electrical alarm sound. Then, if you are free and able to receive the call, you approach your telephone main machine and lift up the handpiece. Then the connection is finally established and talking becomes possible. So after these sounds ceased and a click representing the handpiece being lifted filled the speaker output of sound into my ear, I was able to start a conversation with my grandparent, because he, my grandfather that is, had heard his telephone ringing. His model of telephone had a mechanical bell inside of it, and this prompted him to walk to the telephone, pick it up, and receive the call, as he was not busy. He made his voice audible through the telephone by saying hello, which is a usual telephone greeting. A lot of people also add their name, perhaps just their surname, or use a greeting of the syntax. Hello, this is last name speaking. Or if it is a business, perhaps add the line, how may I help you, to the previous syntax. After hearing this from my grandfather, I replied, hello. My father wanted me to call you. To which my grandfather replied, I don't have time, which was almost cut off by a loud sound like this, indicating the phone being hung up. I thought for this episode of the Extreme Science Daily podcast, I was going to teach you in an easy to understand anecdote type of fashion by utilizing an anecdote from my personal life, for you to be able to relive the first impressions and the initiation of my knowledge about today's topic, being telephones, in order to absorb some of the vast minds deeply filled with knowledge that are my brain, and fill this anecdote with some more technical explanations of the use, the process of usage, and the possible outcomes of using a telephone. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of today's episode, namely episode number 4 of the Extreme Science Daily Podcast. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you understood and increased your knowledge. I've been your host, ESD. Thank you very much for listening, and tune in again tomorrow for the next episode of the Extreme Science Daily